Hello all, I hope you are doing well in these, I'm going to keep using the word unprecedented because yes, it's overused, but my goodness, it is the most appropriate word. Hope you're doing well in these unprecedented times. We're coming to you from the UK with a lockdown to cruise control. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the customer experience and how to blend that, that physical presence with the digital. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce today's two guests. We have Ian Walters from Metro Bank, which I hear you guys have absolutely no branches, so to speak. They're stores, is that right?
We have 77 stores, you're quite right. Branches is what other banks have.
Excellent, excellent. I like that there. I like that a lot. And we're also joined by Matthew Williamson from Mobiquity. How are you doing today, Matthew? All good, all good?
Really good, thank you. Glad to be here and spend some time with you guys talking about the future.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's get straight into it. Right off the bat, now branch banking. We're going to be looking at it is quite a big topic. We're going to be looking at this strictly from a retail perspective, because as soon as we start going down the SME route, it's a whole other ball game. So off the bat, I'm going to throw this to you first, Ian. How do you see different branch banking strategies around the world? Is there some particular, is there anyone aside from yourselves in particular who is leading, or what's kind of your approach to invest in branches more?
So I think it's a mixed picture. I think in the US, we see a number of bigger banks continuing with their expansion plans into new territories, notably Chase and Bank of America. Across Europe, I think it's more a story of retrenchment. So we're seeing cost cutting emerges. So I think only today, the Spanish bank BBVA was announced to be in merger talks with Sabadell, smaller rival. And I think also earlier this week, Santander announced that they're going to be closing a third of their branches in Spain. So from a Metro Bank perspective, we're much more in line with the Chase example, where we know that stores are important as we make an impact in new territories. But for other operators with large legacy networks, well, we recognise that's a different story. So Metro Bank was the first new high street bank in the UK when we opened the doors 10 years ago, in over 100 years. But rather than just look at other banks, we try to learn from different industries and different players across different markets. You know, there's only so many variations within banking. And at Metro Bank, our philosophy is that the customers should choose how they do their banking. We think that element of choice is really important. So we aim to give a great service across all of our channels, across physical, across the app, mobile, on the telephone as well. But because as consumers, our expectations are set by what we experience, no matter what the industry, we aim to learn from the very best. So for example, we looked at the way different industries operate, and we've introduced a service that we call Mcash, which is Deliveroo for cash, which is, you said not to talk about business customers, but I'm going to talk about small business customers. So that's really kind of proving popular. And we're also looking at ways that we can improve the tracking and the transparency for applications that don't complete it in a one-stop. So we're looking to learn from different industries, but we do keep the track on global banking trends as well. But actually, we think we're charting a path that is pretty unique in the modern environment.
One thing, I'm a big, I kind of, weirdly, I'm looking in my family tree, weirdly connected to ATMs and bank branches. It's kind of nuts. But I'm a big old nerd when it comes to bank branches. And I heard that a few years ago that there was somebody came into to a Metro Bank store and went to go and have their change their baby. And they went in there and there wasn't any changing facilities. And they went and said, "Oh, there's no changing facilities. Do you mind if I bring this table in?" And then within the span of about 48 hours, changing facilities were then put in every single toilet of the branches. So they literally came in, installed them within about 48 hours, which is just that speed is pretty incredible. As soon as it became apparent that's what the need was.
It's a true story.
Matthew, can I get yourself to weigh in on this?
I don't have to use changing tables for a while now. My daughters are a bit bigger than that. But yeah, I can imagine how helpful that would be. Yeah, I think we've seen that how branch behaviours have had to change based on the customers and the segmentation and the way they need to do things. So, you know, as Ian said rightly, so, you know, there are more traditional players who have to deal with it in a certain way. but really it's driven by the behaviours of people, and ultimately with COVID and lockdowns and other things, the one thing that was maintained was you still need to do your day-to-day things, even if it's remotely. So just because you can't go into a branch anymore, you have to be able to complete banking services, where it's buying things, paying for things, etc. So we're seeing that a shift in behaviours has been accelerated to leveraging more digital elements. And even if you think about using contactless, I use my grandmother a lot as a reference point. Once she could go out, she used contactless constantly, not from a mobile device because she doesn't have a smartphone, but she does have her new card, and she's thrilled that she can just walk up without touching anything, click, and she's bought what she needs to do. So digital innovation doesn't just have to be a branch strategy innovation, doesn't just have to be something amazingly left field that blows everyone away. Normally it's the simplest things that offer the biggest impact.
Absolutely. Well, let's break that down in terms of what works for a successful branch strategy, because there was a period where I think it was, I want to say Virgin were referring to them as Virgin Lounges, and it was all about the fact that it was more kind of a community hub type thing. What are some of the key elements that make a branch strategy, that approach to the physical? What makes them work? Are there any sort of elements that are brought across the entire network?
So we think there's a few characteristics for a successful branch strategy. So I think start off with joined up customer journeys. That's across all channels. Excellent brand touch point. It's the whole experience that counts and matters. Expertise and education, adult to adult interactions, and importantly the avoidance of failure demand. So we understand all of those component parts. When we open a new store, we hire for attitude, we train for skill, and we really do train to a high level, because we know that the colleagues are the guardians of the customer experience. So we set up our stores to provide an amazing experience. That's from the way you're welcomed to the opening hours. And I think that's showing through in terms of our Net Promoter Scores and the CMA rankings. But we're lucky in that we don't have the large legacy of our competitors. We continue to expand into new catchments, but in a way that recognises that people visit branches less frequently and for more important reasons. So they're willing to travel further than perhaps they used to. But when it comes to physical versus digital, it's not a question of either or, it's the combination of the two. It's bricks and clicks. And it means that people can benefit from the best of both worlds. So at the Metro Bank, we do put a lot of store into our stores. We take a lot of pride from our stores, but we also have an award-winning app. So I think it's the totality of the customer experience, and it's the way the customer journeys really join up to make sense for the customer that matters.
Absolutely. Matthew?
Yeah, again, to reiterate Ian's points, it's not about one size fits all. It's actually about understanding what are the key triggers for each market segment, and then how do you best serve them. So it could be greeting someone that's gone out of the window. If you think about how it used to be in the old days, if I talk about my parents, for example, their banking experiences versus mine versus my children's are so vastly different. I'll say back in the day, they would go to the branch, withdraw the cash for that week, use that, budget accordingly, and then the following week, Monday, whatever it was, or the Friday, we'd go and do the same again. We then moved forward to direct debits and other things and innovations that meant you didn't have to do that. And now it's the next step. And I think the reality is there's going to be a hybrid version of these things. There will still be a segmentation that will want to go through to a branch and see someone and some physical contact. Others will be quite happy to have some sort of digitalization, whether that's on their phone or via a surrogate party that can do that for them. So I think the great thing here is the hybridization model is about choice and what your customers really want versus what you think they want, and listening to what they say.
With that in mind, I want to look at what people actually use the branch for, what the demands are. Because for myself, the thought of going to a branch to withdraw daily use cash, for example, I'm like, I don't want to do that. But equally, you can see I am a fan, Ian, is the old Metro Bank.
Oh, I like it. I recognise that blue.
Lost my card, walk into a branch. Know about your 10-minute rule as well, so you can kind of go there's 10 minutes just after closing, you can still sneak in. You can go in there and they can give you a physical card then and there, as opposed to having to wait 7 weeks 7 days or whatever it may be. It's it's that kind of sort of peace of mind. And again, as you mentioned, it's that hybridization. So what are people using your stores for? What are kind of the demands for the actual branches themselves?
So I think all of the things that you mentioned hold true, and actually customer needs haven't actually changed that much. What I think has changed is expectations are higher, and I think those expectations are driven by the rising in standards across retail and other service industries. And I think this does play to our strengths. Because customers expect to be able to have their card printed if they lose it. They expect to have to be served there and then. People aren't blessed with lots of time. They want adult-to-adult interaction, and they want to be served by somebody that's never seen a sales target in their life, because that's the way we operate. And I think, increasingly, and in line with the influence of newer retailers, if I can still call Apple a newer retailer, stores have a role to educate and create networks. So we run lots of successful events, and that's another reason that customers and would-be customers come into our store. I just want to pick up on a point that Matthew made, actually. I think he's spot on. So we did some independent research in August, and that revealed that 51% of people agree they like to speak to someone face to face. And actually, when you look at the over 55 segment, that increases to 62%. So there's a big chunk of the population that need that human interaction. And that's why we're committed to keeping our stores open longer and later, 7 days a week, for customers with a full range of services available. I think that's a key point, is it's got to be able to do things that are useful when you're into the store. So our aim is to become the UK's best community bank. So that means listening to our customers, giving them the best level of service, no matter how they choose to interact with us. And we call ourselves a people bank, because whatever happens in the future of banking, I think people are going to need people and value human relationships. So another thing that's really important in our stores is each of our stores has a number of safe deposit boxes. You can have extra small, medium, large, extra large. You can pay monthly or annually. You get a key, we get a key. They're next to where we keep our own money in the safe, so they're completely secure. Really highly valued by many local communities. So if you've got some jewellery, you can store it. If you've got some documents of value, you can store it. And I know we're only talking about micro enterprises, not proper commercial customers. But if your business handles cash, the transactional services in the store are really important to your operation. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Stores need to be useful. It also needs to be delivered in a way that makes the customer feel welcome and valued.
Absolutely. I always think another point there about being able to offer that full range of services. Looking at elements such as financial inclusion, and by that I don't just mean having a bank account, I mean being able to have access to all the products that financially you deserve, mortgages, life insurance, yada, yada, yada. If I'm taking out a mortgage, when I took out a mortgage, I knew nothing about taking out a mortgage. It's not one of those things that there's the joke at school, thank goodness, I learned what Pythagoras is, but I have no idea what a mortgage is. With that kind of lack of financial literacy as a whole, you do want to have that face-to-face moment, even if it's just purely from a reassurance, or if something goes wrong, this is a huge amount of money, I can still go and see people face-to-face. Matthew, just to get yourself to weigh in on this, where do you see some of the newer demands from customers when actually interacting face-to-face in a physical setting?
So I think it's really interesting because it's led by behaviour, right? And the behaviours depend on where you are in the world and regional variances and cultural customs. So, if we use the element of, do I want to go to a bank? If I talk about myself personally, no. And there's no offence to the bank or the person who provides my services, but what I want to do is be able to do it via the phone, via an app, and get on with my day. I'm married, I have 2 kids, they're very demanding, as everyone's are, and that's my life, as well as work and other things. So you have to be able to access the right things at the right time. And people have heard me talk about this before. One of my biggest bugbears, which is an easy fix, is you go into the app on your phone, and there's something you're not sure exactly how you want to do it. So you go to FAQs, and what does it do? It doesn't tell you what to do. It sends you to a URL. You click here, and it sends you out to a web page. If I wanted to go looking for it out of Google, is the honest truth. And what I really need is just an innovative, suggestive approach to what I'm trying to achieve. And that's also going to be based on predictive analytics around how I use the app, for example, where I am in my life at that moment in time. And then that can lead into, if I have to go to a branch for a certain thing, okay. But eventually I think it will have to come down to, do I want to go to a branch because I want that human touch? Some people want it more than others. Or would I be satisfied being able to do everything I need to do through an app or through some sort of digital portal? And that's the real element that the banks do have to juggle in the future of banking, is certain customers will want a physical interaction to make sure they feel comfortable with the choices and the decisions they're making, whereas others won't. So you need to be able to service both at the same time.
That sounds remarkably easy. Just, I can see that there's a few challenges there to do that. So can you unpack that a bit? How is the industry as a whole going to evolve in terms of digital against this backdrop of that face-to-face?
So my view on this, and I tend to go a long way out into the future. So I'll take you on my journey with me in that. And I use an example of my grandmother again. She comes up a lot. She's very dear to me. The example of on a Tuesday in England or in the UK, traditionally was the day you draw down on your pension. So you'd stand in line at the post office, you'd wait your turn. And while you were there, lots of your friends would potentially be there, or people you know. You'd catch up, have a chat, draw down your pension, go about your day. Since direct debits came along, that's no longer a requirement. You don't need to go to the post office to do that. But what my grandmother and her friends do is actually go to the coffee shop next door. So the behaviour has changed. The requirement was to draw down the pension, whereas now that time was actually perceived as a pain, but the benefit was interacting with friends, colleagues, catching up. Now they meet for coffee. So the same amount of time, but they're in a coffee house doing that. Now, if you take that one step further, imagine if you didn't need a branch per se, but you had a community hub. So someone to meet coffee, meet up. Traditionally it would be in a village hall or some sort of community centre. But now when you access that bricks and mortar place with your friends or whoever, you can actually access various brands regardless actually of who they are, and if you bank with different ones, and do your banking there. If I give the example of other brands are available, but I go to Starbucks, I'm old school, so I stand in my queue and I order, they take my name and I wait for my coffee. Well, if I'm honest right now, one of my behaviours is I go on my phone while I'm waiting and I do certain things, and that may be check my balance, whatever. Imagine if while I was at that branch, that Starbucks, I could access Metrobank, for example, or Lloyds or HSBC and do my banking while I was there. There could be that physicality. There could even be a teller organisation that was agnostic to brand. So I could go and speak to someone and they'd be authorised through open banking to give me the services that I need in that one place, if I need that physical human touch and interaction. So there are many different ways that this could shape up. But I could see at some point brands aligning together and joining up, co-branding potentially, to offer those services, because then there's economy of scale. You don't both have to have a branch or a branch or a department per area, per brand. It's just one place, a community place where everyone can come together, do their banking. And in today's world as well, mental health is a really big thing. Isn't it good if we created this place in smaller rural communities, for example, where you could all come together, do your utility plays and catch up with everyone at the same time?
Absolutely. I mean, the opportunity there. I mean, you could even do things, such as you could go to your local community hub to get your dog microchipped, for example.
So I hear.
Ian, did you want to weigh on this in terms of the kind of approach to digital? Sorry, that was I have read Vernon's book about you can get your dog microchipped at branches.
Yeah, I mean, we welcome kids, dogs, the family. We've even had a horse in the store before. It's just this, we work very hard to be part of the local community that we're in. And so all of our colleagues, we have something called a day to amaze. So that's a day that you're paid, but you don't work in the store, that you just do some good work in the local community. Any local businesses, very welcome to use any of our meeting facilities when we're not using them, in terms of having access to nice, well-supported professional meeting facilities. And we, in each of our stores, I'm going to go down to the local business route again, is we have a local business manager, because one group that really does find banking hard, I think that the hardest group, and the group with probably the most unmet needs, are the small business community. And having that local business manager, somebody that actually is from that town, lives in that town, understands that town, knows everybody in that town, having that local sort of touch and of access is really important to people. I think, we're trying to provide the best of every channel, but I think, rooted in a local community ethos, because, I think, we've all got a responsibility to support the local communities and support the local high streets.
Let's, I do want to bring in the elephants in the room. We've got to bring in the challenges, your Monzo, Revolut, Starling, even all of there's one announced this week that's got a real push on Instagram, Lannister, or Viola Black 2.0. There's a lot of of these neo banks with no physical presence entering in. Also, I thought, because the likes of Monzo partner with PayPoint, Starling has got an incredible partnership with the post office. Where does this leave the neobanks in terms of the physical touch point? I'll throw this to you first, Matthew.
So it leads on with the things we've already discussed already. I think is you need that balance of hybridization between physical touch points and digital entry point, and also understand the market you service. And is it just that market you want to look after, and therefore they will have specific requirements? Or is it a broader market that you're trying to expand into, and what are the challenges around that? If we think about all the segments there is an omnichannel approach, which is technically the omnichannel approach has existed for a long time, but how well has it been executed? Just because you've got an app, okay, great. Does the app work well? Do you just have the basics covered? Things like, we've done some reporting before that you're aware of, where we actually found out some of the biggest problems weren't the app itself once the user was inside. They liked the experience. The challenge was getting into the app in the first place consistently. So a lot of it is about doing the basics, not trying to be, I suppose is the word flash, not trying to be too over the top with your innovation, and make it really simplistic, but that the outcome is what the customer both wants and needs. And sometimes you need to look ahead and make sure you've understood the customer, not just for today, but for tomorrow and moving forward.
Absolutely. Ian, can I get you to weigh in on this in terms of the purely digital only people moving into the space?
So I think, where does this leave the neobanks? I think it leaves the neobanks targeting distinct segments with distinct propositions. And there's a role for them, and if it helps raise standards in the industry and drive competition and drive innovation, then that's good for the consumer. But what's quite interesting from our perspective is that the presence of a store in a town enables stronger growth in digital channels. So we've observed that if we open a store, we see this digital halo. So in those catchments where we open a new store, we see our digital account opening typically double. As well as customers continuing to open accounts in stores. So I do think this combination of the physical and the digital, there's a real kind of large addressable part of the market that welcomes that. And so we know that the presence of a store is an important factor in the decision to become a Metro Bank customer.
Excellent. Let's the last two things I want to touch on. Got to talk a little bit more about omnichannel, because one of the key elements that I do think all banks need to be able to do is to be able to start, say, something like a credit card application online, or even on social, move to online, physical, and be able to kind of have that journey throughout all the different channels along the way. Is that omni-channel approach? I mean, is that the only way to bank nowadays? You guys at Metro, what's your sort of approach to having all these different channels together?
So we think that the customer should have a choice, and whatever the customer wants to do, they should be able to do it, in person, online, in the app, or on the phone. That's our aim. We've got work to do. We were only kind of created 10 years ago, so there's work to do. But I think in an increasingly digital focused world, though, it's important to remember the role that face-to-face contact does have for those moments of truth. You mentioned the mortgage application, or major life decisions, or financial difficulty. So I come back to the fact that from an omni-channel perspective, there's a really significant customer group that values choice. And that's the part of the market that we're kind of focused on. And our research tells us that there's at least half of the UK population really want people. And whatever proposition they want is going to have people at the heart of it.
Excellent. Matthew, can I get you to weigh in on this in terms of this approach to omni-channel?
Yeah, we already see use cases of omni-channel strategies around the world. If you use examples like, we now are in the realm, you're probably someone yourself actually who's close to it, a digital native. We hear this banded about quite a lot. People are just naturally part of this world and haven't had to evolve and learn and adapt. So we're seeing already that people along those lines in that segmentation are setting up things like an offline shop called Amazon Go is one example, or boutique banking using digital support to deliver a VIP service. So the reality is now the barriers to entry are smaller and smaller if you're a new entrant. If you've always been part of this digital world and you have the opinion that I shouldn't have to have such overheads or such onerous activities and requirements just to get to banking services, I can create my own, or I can create an offering that fits my market type. As Ian just said there, their segmentation primarily are people who want that personal, physical touch point, and that's working really well. I remember the hype, and I mean this legitimately, I worked in Holborn 10 years ago. So I remember the branch being built outside and the banners and everything, and there was a real buzz around the area about what does this mean. We've read about it, we've understood it, and 10 years ago especially, that was exactly what people wanted, and we're still seeing that's there. But as Ian's alluded to as well, it's had to evolve on top of that as well. It can't just be a branch in a place and that's all we deliver. There have to be other capabilities around it.
Let's right. The other elephant in the room we've got to talk about, and this is the kind of the final thing I want to bring in, is we've got to talk about the pandemic, because that has definitely caused a few changes, to put it mildly. Looking at Europe as a whole, you can go to so many different bank branches, and they're all different. You have some incredibly sort of small ones that are literally hundreds of years old in, say, southern Italy, and then you have some which are kind of that wonderful sort of hybrid one where they're completely unmanned. Looking at Europe, where do we see branch banking post-pandemic? Vaccines come along, let's say it's perfect, cures everything. Where do we see the future of the branch? Ian, can I get you to weigh in first? I'm holding you to this, so I'm expecting Metro Bank to do this exactly.
So I think across the industry, I think branch networks will inevitably decline with accelerated digital adoption, cost pressures, mergers, acquisitions that we referenced earlier, and there'll also be strong arguments for that, because in many cases the legacy networks are too big. But it needs to be done thoughtfully to avoid creating lasting damage. But our research that we did in August in the UK, people in the UK think that banks have given up on the high street. Some 44% of people have been impacted by bank closures or reduced opening times during the pandemic, with 48% of people also worried banks will now continue on the reduced hours or even close altogether. But the data shows that people still value going to their local bank, and I don't think that's going to disappear. We've actually opened 2 new stores since March the 23rd. One a drive-through in Cardiff Newport Road, the second one in Sheffield. And we're committed to opening 15 new Metro stores in the north by the end of 2025, and that will create around about 300 new jobs as a result. But it's, for me, it's not just about money. Local banks can play a really positive role in their local communities, whether it's by hosting network events for small businesses, raising money for local charities, or offering a warm, friendly, welcoming environment for people to learn more about their finances. Having that physical presence on the high street offers so much to such a wide range of people. So I think Metro Bank is here to stay.
Very, very well said there. I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of that kind of community building. That's what they need to be focused on. I think gone are the days as branches as a transaction center. Matthew and yourself, where would you see the branch sort of banking? What do you see it looking like post-pandemic?
So again, I think it's a really interesting question. Very hard to fully forecast forward and look through the crystal ball. But I think if we take it back a moment, which really stems onto what we talked about as a whole, at the center of everything is human behavior. Now, the reality is we're looking at this with a forward glass and saying we have a vaccine, everything goes back to some sort of new normal, which is a hybridization of people using more digital contactless, etc. We have to factor in, will people actually really want to go out? People are so used to not being in crowded places and have been for some time, not being able to come within a certain distance of people. So you may actually find there'll be less people going out than expected initially. As confidence grows, that's likely to increase. But it does come back to the point that Ian was talking about, community hubs, etc. And I think there's an operational element here where some of these brands that I talked about may come together to create a community financial services physical hub that you can enter. And part of that could be through AI or digital assistants, where you walk up to what is effectively a hub or a cubicle, and then you engage, do your authentication checks, etc., through that, and get access to those services. There's an opportunity or a USP for certain banks to carve that out and make that their core offering, that they can service people however they feel best comfortable. If we factor in more vulnerable elements of society or the elderly, it may even mean that we have to move to a mobile hub that goes into those specific communities to offer those banking services end to end. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. I don't think we're done yet with the journey. In fact, if I'm honest, I think we're just beginning it. I think there's an interesting group out there that says we're 1% started. I think I'm probably there with them on that as well. There's a long way to go, but there's a lot of us in the industry that can help them achieve that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that those guys as well. They're big fans of physical branches as well. They love a big network.
So they say.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Ian, where's best to find out more about yourself and Metrobank?
So our website, so all details are available on our website. And if you'd like ever to visit one of our stores, then let me know. I'll be delighted to show you around.
Yeah, the best place for us is Mobiquity Inc. online. It's our website, and there you can find use cases on award-winning banks like ELA, a digital bank from scratch, based in Bahrain, and there's lots of other use cases that you can go through. Also, I'm available on LinkedIn, and we're happy to talk whenever you want to have an interesting discussion.
Boom, excellent. Thank you all very much.